All right, man. We're live right now. So, my name is Zach,
And
and
I
this
am
is.
Steve, and you are listening to With Thunderous Applause podcast, a podcast where two friends with differing opinions get together and shoot the shit about current events.
Mostly shooting the shit. It's just great to talk to your friends. Anywho, so
What are we looking at tonight, my friend?
well, I don't know. What about the check-in?
Oh yeah, sure. Let's check in.
I feel like
I
we got to
like
check
checking in.
in. Yeah,
Well,
man.
we kind of already did that because we were working on tech stuff for like 20 minutes, and we were talking about alternative endings for
Easily.
Game of Thrones.
Oh
And
yeah.
as I just watched the first episode again, as we begin to watch the entire series again, because I don't know. I'll tell you something funny, Zach.
Yes.
I was like very much like perturbed by like the violence in something like Squid Games. Like I only got through like the first 4 episodes, I
Never
think.
watched it.
It's an interesting concept. There's a lot of shows that are and movies that are like that where there's just this like the rich people hunting the poor people, or like putting poor people together in situations where the rules allow them to murder each other just
what was
to
the
like
Katniss one?
prove that human nature is evil. Yeah, with Katniss.
Everdeen. I know the name. I don't know anything else.
Anybody watching can think of the show.
You guys know it. Yeah.
Mockingbird or Mockingjay.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that exactly, where it's just like a fucking blood sport arena and all that other stuff, and it like the level of violence like really bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, oh, Game of Thrones, like there's some stuff that bothers me, like especially season 1, like I mean the whole series, but like the first couple episodes of season 1 are super rapey. Like that bothers me a lot. And then there's a lot of like, gratuitous violence, but like it's weird that it doesn't bother me in the same way. I think because like there's an intentional like division between the real world and fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it feels medieval, but like there's fantasy elements to it. So it feels like fiction.
Yeah.
Whereas like Squid Games is like all these people are broke and they owe the bank a lot of money. So we'll put them in the situation where they can murder each other for money. And like,
wait, that's my Tuesday.
That is too real for me in some ways. Plus,
prison violence, man. Prison violence has always bothered me. Like a lot of other things, but then when it comes to like people who are just like locked up for no other reason than they fucked up on some level, just bothers the shit out of me. Like it's like no one deserves that. Nobody signed up for that shit. You just happen to get caught up in a prison industrial complex that requires you to serve hard time.
Yeah.
Fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Next exactly. Episode. Yeah, there's just some things that like no matter how hard I try, like they just kind of I'm not into them. Like I like Squid Games. I thought the production value was good. The concept was interesting, but I think it hit a little too close to home. Whereas like Game of Thrones is like, ooh, that's fucking gnarly, but like it's just fantasy.
Yeah,
right?
well,
like,
it's not pitting the poor against the poor and so on. Yeah,
it's mostly the rich against the poor in that show, though.
Yeah,
or the rich against the rich, right? Like that's what the Game of Thrones is like, how do these super wealthy nobles or whatever
and why are
vie for power?
Why are we able to watch that more comfortably than we are, watching like basically poor on poor crimes? Like why are we more comfortable watching these wealthy on wealthy crimes than we are poor on poor crimes? Does it just hit too close to home? I mean,
I don't know.
I would say a lot. I'm just going to go out there on a limb and say like it disturbs us on a much more visceral level because we live it day to day. Like that is literally your average day-to-day interaction in society, is just like, hey, how am I slightly better than this other poor person next to me, as opposed to like, how can I watch these rich people fight it out?
Right. And even crimes against rich people, like, there's kind of a debate among like I wouldn't say necessarily like left elements of the political spectrum, but there's definitely, it always comes up that the liberals are always complaining more radical elements want to like throw bricks through bank windows and be like, oh, you're committing violence. Or like when the George Floyd uprisings and they, are pitching bricks, and they're like, oh, that's your community. Why are you destroying your community? And like the
That
best
fucking
thing I ever
bank is in my
saw.
community.
Right, precisely. It's like, no, these are basically like corporations that have like come and colonized, and I guess they give some really shitty low wage jobs to some of members of our community, but
Yeah,
like
I've had those
most of
shitty
the
low
time they're
wage
just
jobs.
taking that money and then it goes to wherever their headquarters is, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then from there it gets distributed to the same fucking 3 or 4 or 5,000 families that own like 85% of this.
Well, that's the thing. The moment that you are a publicly owned entity, you are just as extractive as every other publicly owned entity. Like whether you're a small time bank or a middling bank, these are my experiences, by the way, folks. Whether you're a small bank or a medium bank, like you are extracting wealth from the communities that you operate in and funneling it upwards. Whether it's to your stockholders or that's exactly what it is. Like you're always extracting wealth, and it ultimately causes people in your area to suffer. There's no getting around it.
Yeah. So as far as check-in, everything's the same as it was. It rained.
No, it's not.
Dude, it rained.
Did it rain?
Dude, so
inches.
It kind of sprinkled and got some decent rain for like a day or two, and then we had like a cloud burst yesterday that like dumped buckets for the better part of 45 minutes. We probably got like I haven't checked any like weather stations or anything, but my guess is if I did, we had at least an inch and a quarter, possibly an inch and a half in like about an hour.
I think we got less than an inch, and all it did was pull the snails out.
Oh yeah, and as soon as like it warms up, because like it cooled down, and then we finally got some rain, and then as soon as it'll warm up again, there'll be insects everywhere.
Oh yeah.
They love that. They love that dose of spring water. Everything just looked green again after 2 days. Like it was already like browning in a real way.
How do we come out and eat all of that green?
Yeah, how do we? I mean, they're just doing their life cycle, right? So that's new. And let's see. Other than that, everything's the same as it were.
Yep. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to energy. We were talking about oil last we spoke.
Okay. Yeah. You were just setting it up. Go ahead, man.
I was gonna say we were talking about oil last we spoke, and we're ready to move on to temporarily past the production of energy and on to the conservation of energy. Just a small bit on efficiency.
Yeah, and I think the idea is like, I mean, we never really finished because I had technical difficulties. That's part of the check-in too, but I already told you earlier. Got my new modem.
Yes.
Got it set up. I'm
tested it.
Fucking speeds that are like 5 or 6 times faster than I've had for like the last many years.
Bro, I see like super dark green on fucking, the Ninja. You're in there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I've already noticed too that my camera definition, which is like
a
1080p camera, like it already looks better.
Way better, man.
I just put on a hat, I guess, and that fixes it. At any rate, so that's new, and we never really finished that conversation on energy, but it's really important not just to talk about like how fucked we are because we're like we can't afford to burn the fossil fuels even if they were limitless, right? Because of the carbon pollution and other greenhouse gases and all sorts of ecosystem consequences. But to carry that conversation forward a bit, we're going to talk about alternatives. So I think we got lined up talking about like thorium or fusion. Also,
we're gonna start off small, man. But go on.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk a little bit about micro hydro, I think, and then a little bit about energy conservation or efficiency.
We're actually gonna start totally opposite. We're gonna go with efficiency, micro hydro, and then we're gonna move over to like crazy future stuffs.
Okay,
seems like
I like that. And it's cool. One thing that I kind of admired about like Bernie Sanders' stump speech when he was running in 2016 is that when he talked about like climate and energy, he always just the rhetoric of it, right? Like how we construct sentences to denote importance or to create a rhythm or whatever. I admired that he always talked about energy efficiency and sustainable energy, always in that order. He never said we need solar panels and he understood, and that signaled to me, if for all of his faults and failures, and backpedaling and groveling and knee bending to the corporate establishment,
he's no Jon Snow. He bends the knee.
He bends that knee. He that signaled to me that he understood that efficiency is the best bang for the buck.
Yes.
Now,
of course,
we can play this clip to talk about this. This is a new construction, and maybe we can talk a little bit about policy for energy conservation.
Yeah,
and I should come with more numbers because I've looked at them and I've processed them, but I don't have them to give to anybody.
You got to get notes, man. We got the page over here. You can do notes like I did on the bottom. Anyway, so I went back to work and I returned my old shirts because I'm all about that reuse. And I ended up talking to one of the newer people in my department. She's only temp, but she was just like, "Oh, that is you. I saw your car. I really like Bernie Sanders." And I was just like, "Oh, well, that's really nice. And I appreciate that, and she's like, "Yeah, it's good to see, or good to see other people, who are," and she paused and I was like, "Old." And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm the people. I'm the olds supporting the thing that the younger kids want." She's 22 and I'm just like, "Oh, I'm literally the olds now at 41. Good to know."
We're not that old. I definitely consider myself entering the third part of my life, though.
Oh, really?
The last third.
Yeah, I wish I could live to be 120 or something like that. That'd be great.
No, fuck no, bro.
I know we're not gonna make it.
I was talking to someone about this last week. I talked to a friend I hadn't talked to in at least over a year, and I was joking. I was like, "I'm in the last third of my life. If I make it to 60, I'll be happy. If I make it to 65, I'll be stoked. If I make it to 70,
Hunter S. Thompson philosophy, where it's just hey, man, if I make it to fucking 60, I'm great."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a reasonable lifespan for our organism, right? We're not a redwood tree. We're not supposed to live 1,000 fucking years.
However, I do want to become a cyborg and live until I'm 200. That would be great. There's just so much in the future that I need to see.
Really, that is a question. Maybe, hopefully, we can dig deeper into through the course of this. But I do want to get moving because,
all right.
Unfortunately, I have other
limited time for Steve Solo. All right, we're doing it.
How do you design a building that cools itself? This is a termite mound. Millions of termites live inside these structures, some of which stretch an astonishing 30 feet high. Although these termite skyscrapers may look solid from the outside, they are actually covered in tiny holes that allow air to pass through freely. Like a giant lung, the structure inhales and exhales as temperatures rise and fall throughout the day. This termite ventilation inspired Pierce to use an approach known as biomimicry, imitating the ingenuity found in nature to solve human problems. Meet the Eastgate Center. The building is made from concrete slabs and brick. Just like the soil inside a termite mound, these materials have a high thermal mass, which means they can absorb a lot of heat without really changing temperature. The exterior of the building is prickly, like a cactus. By increasing the amount of surface area, heat loss is improved at night while heat gain is reduced during the day. Inside the building, low-power fans pull in cool night air from outside and disperse it throughout the 7 floors. The concrete blocks absorb the cold, insulating the building and chilling the circulating air. When the morning comes and temperatures rise, warm air is vented up through the ceiling and released by the chimneys. Thanks to this innovative design, temperatures inside stay at a comfortable 82 degrees during the day and 57 degrees at night. Not to mention, it uses up to 35% less energy than similar buildings in Zimbabwe. Since opening its doors in 1996, Mick Pierce's 90% natural climate control system has made the Eastgate Center a global landmark for sustainability. So, we must ask ourselves, if an architect could design a self-cooling building with termite-inspired climate control, what other innovations can Mother Nature inspire?
What other innovations, indeed?
Yeah. So that's like one of my favorite go-to examples for like we mentioned last week about Passive House.
Yes.
Like, I think the building is interesting in a lot of ways. I'm not entirely sure how practical that is. I wanted to find some stuff on like Middle Eastern architecture. Like, you know, you fall down like internet rabbit holes sometimes and you find fucking gems, dude. Like, I found this like study on passive heating and cooling in Arabic architecture, right? Like, and I'm like, holy shit, like, because they're hot climate, like their days are hot, but their nights get cooler. Like, their days get like really hot.
No,
like, hotter than here,
right?
But I'm like, how, like, we have all these single family stick frame homes with fucking gigantic HVAC units on them.
Yeah.
And like, we could just build clusters of housing that are like utilize basic techniques. Like, they put them very close together.
Yeah.
And then they orient the streets. I mean, you see this in the old parts of cities like Dubai.
Yeah.
They orient it with the dominant evening wind. So like the wind will blow through, and then there's these like basically airfoils that utilize differential pressure, and then they'll force air down into these houses or draw air up out of these houses.
Right.
And then there's these like concrete channels, basically, or not concrete, like stone channels that they build into the housing. So that air can be drawn through it, and then they use a lot of thermal mass, and then they plaster coat everything in white so it reflects as much sun as possible. There's some where they'll have like rooftop patios. They'll even string like shade sails to keep even more sun off of it. Like, all these really innovative ways, because like we human beings have been around, like air conditioning, refrigeration have only been around for about 150 years.
We may have learned a lot prior to the innovation,
right,
of air conditioning.
Of these very energy intensive things. They said it cuts the bill. It's 30% of normal buildings, but that's all energy. And then what they said later was 90% natural heating and cooling.
Right.
And so you had mentioned when we were preparing the clips today that you would prefer it to be less than 82. Me personally, my own. Do you want to mention that and why?
No,
maybe because you didn't explain it. We were like, let's talk about it on the podcast we can disagree about something.
We're two friends who disagree about things, but tend to agree upon most things. Get it
because
anyway,
the world's a fucked up place.
The world's a fucked up place, but we tend to agree while not disagree.
And rich people should go to the guillotine.
They should. I think they taste good. I haven't tried them yet. I've had so many other meats. I just.
All right.
Hello, fans.
So no, seriously. So you said that 82 is uncomfortable for you. Is that basically what you were getting at?
I think 78 is pretty good for me. But the thing is, when it comes to my family, they're going to say like 72. That is what my electrical bill tells me. But a very interesting thing that I got to do is in Fresno, they have the underground gardens. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's basically this dude who was just completely wonkers and was like, oh yeah, I'm from this cool part of
Italy.
No, not Italy.
Sicily.
Spain. Sicily?
Sicily.
That's Spain, right?
No, that's in Italy.
Damn you!
In Italy.
It is Italy. Okay, so
Sicily is the fucking rock with the boots kicking, man. Don't you remember like
Nah.
second grade geography?
But no, surprisingly not. So anyway, this Sicilian, he came into Fresno because he was ultimately like going to have to take care of property like back in Italy that he would never own, and he was just like, "Fuck it, America! America's great. I can own my own shit. I don't have to be privy to my own family." And so he came here, and he was like, "All right, I'm gonna check it out. Oh, the East Coast is great, but it snows. Snow is bullshit." And then he ultimately goes down to California and he's like, cool, my brother's in Fresno. I'm going to go to Fresno. God, hot as balls. Moving south. Okay, all right. Okay, this is much better. How much do I have to spend? Oh my God. I don't have that sort of money. I'm moving back to Fresno. So he buys like 80 acres in Fresno and ends up just realizing it's way too fucking hot. And so he digs down. And he keeps digging. And he keeps digging.
The hard pan. Hard pan.
Anyway, he hits hard pan at about 10 feet.
You're so wrong.
Anyway, he keeps digging.
He digs.
And he digs and he digs and he ultimately makes a cooler and cooler environment for him and his guests. More importantly, he's a very popular man, and so he ends up inviting people over and getting them to visit, and he makes this wonderful, nice, cooled subterranean area. And so, like, maybe we should all just make a subterranean area. Why aren't we hobbits?
Well, I think I mentioned last week. I'm not sure about. I don't know a lot about. I mean, California had so much diversity among its indigenous people. Like, I don't know it all. I know I'm on occupied Mechoopda lands. I know the Mechoopda did live in houses that were partially submerged, or the Maidu cultural complex, which is several tribes in this part of Northern California, generally dug because their ranges were very small because the resources were so abundant. Like most of it was wetlands. They had a river, they had freshwater fish, they had all this grasslands for hunting game, and then they had the salmon, and then they had all the acorns, and then in the foothills, and they might go a little bit higher, 3,000, 4,000 feet during the summer for hunting and gathering, but in materials and tradable goods. But like most of the time, they kind of stayed in a small territory. So they were able to have like basically villages. Like they weren't on a completely seasonal rotation. They did have more or less permanently occupied spaces. And even if they went up to the hills for like, their 4 or 5 weeks in the summertime when it's really hot in the valley, like it's just there when they come back, right?
Yeah. Nobody, like, I claim this, it's mine.
And so it was their territory, and so they could have a permanent or semi-permanent village sites. But anyway, they would construct partially submerged buildings because it's just the temperature swing is much is mediated by being subterranean. So that totally makes sense. And in this case, with the termite inspired one, all that ventilation and stuff like that is in the thermal mass and all these other concepts like just makes sense. And I don't want to rehash shit we said last week because we did talk a bit about how bad like just timber frame housing is.
Yes.
But like we can incorporate these concepts if we want. Like there's literally like we could just pull building code from cities like Dubai and see like what they have said about code in old parts of their city or whatever, and we can just take that and like trial it here, right?
Well,
like
I think maybe are you trying to say like we should adjust our earthquake readiness codes to areas that have had earthquakes in the past?
Well, no. I'm saying like our a lot of it is aesthetics.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Personally, I like Arabic architecture. Like I love it, in fact. But and that's as a broad statement, right? Like obviously there's architects and different schools of thinking that in architecture that I'm not familiar with. But like I like the aesthetic and the energy efficiency and the passivity of the heating and cooling and ventilation, like especially when you get a lot of buildings all crammed together on purpose, because if we're all together, then it keeps the sun out, and then it's all this thermal mass. It stays shaded too, and they have these little courtyard gardens, like where it's just like a tree and a hangout, and they would also do underground facilities, especially like in the palaces in the larger cities back in the day. They basically have freshwater springs tapped in, and then there'd basically be underground aqueducts, and then what's that?
I was gonna say, it sounds like you appreciate the building in so much as it causes you to have direct interaction with everyone else in your community. Is that?
Oh no, 100%. And
okay.
That's fairly recent among particularly Americans and maybe a lot of the other kind of Anglo peoples like Australia and Canada and stuff. But like most people live in fairly close-knit communities. But my point is that like, yeah, they'd have underground like fountains and stuff, and people could just go underground during the day when it was super hot, and then they come up at night.
Okay.
And we just need to adjust that standard. And I think that kind of architecture is innovative, but I don't think practical at the large scale.
No,
so we have
very little is practical at large scale aside from just doing what we've been doing recently.
There's a certain inertia to the system, right?
Yeah. Well, it's you're always going to do what's been done because it works. If you are doing it in bulk, like hundreds of thousands of units, it's only going to make sense.
Yeah, but I would totally like to see an apartment block, apartment complex that looks like that and makes sense.
Yes.
Than just see, brand new luxury apartments, like, because that's all they build anymore.
It's literally what's happening down the street in order to.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's kind of particularly bad because it's in an area where homeless people have been gathering, and so it's literally just to kick them out. They're building something to make sure that they don't have anywhere to stay.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit last week, but
yeah, we did. And it's hitting closer and closer to home.
What's that?
Oh, it's hitting closer and closer to home every day.
Every day. So to move from that to the next clip, energy efficiency is like far more. I mentioned Bernie and how I appreciated the rhetoric comes on the front end. He talks about energy efficiency. I mean, we'll have to have a discussion on that by itself, because I could talk for a while, but basically like solar panels. Oh, cool. There's all these government incentives to buy solar panels. Okay. Where do those solar panels come from? China? Or even if they're built here in the United States, it's a factory somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, how would you install insulation and install geothermal heat pumps to replace like aging HVAC systems, or make modifications to existing suburban sprawl that like make it easier for passive heating and cooling? Like it should be standard to have a whole house fan in Chico, because the nights, there's only like a couple weeks a year where the nights are really fucking hot, and it's not even every year. That there's hot nights. It's a lot of years.
I disagree.
Well, right.
It's a fair number of years. Yeah.
But let me finish my thought. A whole house fan would change a lot. Like if it gets to like 65 at night, and you can exchange all that air before sunrise and close your house up, even if you want to keep the house 75 degrees, like you've just bought yourself several hours of not using an HVAC system.
That's a great point. Ahead. Yes. No, I was wondering, I've looked it up, and scientifically, I've kind of like got my brain at a point where I can't tell the difference. HVAC versus heat pump, I believe it was.
Yeah, so like I think the way, I don't actually really understand how it works. I know that like a geothermal heat pump will use significantly less electricity because they remove, I think, the compressor component, and it's more about moving air. Let me look into it. Maybe we can talk about it.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
But I
that
know
was,
that they're
was like
much
one thing I never
less.
understood.
Because I was going to have one installed. I wound up going with the conventional HVAC because the financing was like
Easier, I would imagine.
It also like I could finance it at a very low interest rate plus get like a kickback because I bought it through Costco. And so I got a kickback of like $2,400 in credits from
hell
Costco.
Yeah.
And the whole unit cost me for heat and air conditioning cost me, I think, like $16,000. And when I first moved into the house, I talked to someone about geothermal and solar hot water and a couple other improvements I wanted to make and I still want to make.
Yeah.
And the system was going to be like $32,000.
Don't you need like a pretty big difference in temperature for geothermal to work?
I don't think so. Like I said, I'm not an expert on it, but it would not eliminate heating and cooling costs, and it was going to cost like $32,000.
Okay.
So you say you're comfortable at 75, but your family wants.
No, I tend to be comfortable. Yeah, like 75 to 80. I'm cool.
Okay. Yeah. So like, I mean, so we did this study when I was in college. Like, I was in this like environmental policy class, and every it's offered in the spring, and that's when student elections are, right? So we would take this, and every year, like the students in this class would like not only learn like theory, like I think it was called ecological thought and action. So we learned about like different ways of thinking about the environment and read and everything else you do in a college course, read and write. But like the main practical component to it or activity component was like, we would come up with an idea, we'd research it, and then we'd make a political campaign. And then we would take that political campaign and we would go out and canvass and other things so that in the student election, students would vote for our policy, right?
Okay.
In favor of our policy. And when I was taking that class, we selected changing heating and cooling standards at the university. And the idea is that like you're heating this building to like 75 in the winter, and then you're cooling it to 75 in the summer, but like you're not in a building all day. So like you go outside, and you're like where I live, most everybody walks, and even if you did drive like or take a bus, like you still have quite a bit of walking to do once you get off the bus.
Yes.
Or once you get out of your car, because like,
absolutely, yeah.
Minimal, transportation is largely not permitted in the core of campus.
Yeah, and typically like 2 to 5 blocks even on campus.
Yeah, even if you take the bus stop is right there, and if you have a building in the class in the science building, that's still like a 10-minute walk, even though you took the bus, right? Like so. Anyway, the point is that like people are outside. It is an outside campus. And so if people are layered in the winter, they're coming into a room where it's hot. And now they're like, ugh, it's hot. I'm trying to peel my layers off so I can put them back on to go back outside after class is over. And alternatively, in the summertime, like, and this was my experience, it's so warm, like at some point your body kind of adjusts to it. And obviously, like you're not in class in the summer, but like in fucking September, it is very hot in Chico, and in May, it can be quite hot as well. So like, there's still hot months in school. So like, you'd find like you'd adjust to being warm. You'd be in like Birkenstocks or flip flops and a pair of shorts and a t-shirt or whatever, and then you would get into you'd go into class, and you're like, "Fuck, bro, it's like cold," because your body like adjusts to it and warms up.
Yeah.
And you might have sweat a little bit if you were trying to hustle, like walking pretty fast on a hot day. And so you come in damp and like warm, and then you're like walking into a refrigerator, and it's those shocks. So we found a bunch of research that showed that that's actually like most people's experience when they're going from inside to climate control, or like outside into a climate controlled space. There's a considerable shock.
Yeah.
And so by just changing just a few degrees, it would not be noticeable to the student, to anybody. Really.
Oh, so basically lessen the shock temperature.
Right. It would,
the delta
wouldn't
T
be noticeable.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't be like, oh my God, this room is so cold in the winter because it's not 70 5, it's 71.
That is very interesting because
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I definitely read when we had people at my last bank who were concerned about the temperature. And I was just like, okay, cool. Like somebody had mentioned like, oh yeah, when you push the button, it doesn't even do anything. It's just, for your own benefit. It's not actually adjusting the temperature. And I was like, holy shit, is this fucking real? And like everything I read was like, yeah, probably, if your building is heated or cooled by, the following companies, they will gladly put in a $5 fake, temperature adjuster rather than actually heating your room anymore. Like having to put in the necessary, ducting in order to make sure your room got more heating, or any sort of like actually, you hooking up your room with a sensor that you could, Bluetooth to the other sensors. And so I fucking loved that. And after I read about it, I was like, oh yeah, does the company we're contracting with do that? Absolutely, yes, they do. And we had a woman who complained about it, got a sensor put in, and she could hit the plus and the minus button as she pleased. And we actually got like a monitor, and the temperature never changed.
Yeah, it's a placebo effect,
It's a
right?
placebo effect for sure.
Yeah, it's wild. Okay, let's move on to this next clip. But I guess the point is that like for me, I'm more focused. My family is in relationships change, right? And maybe my puritanical approach to using climate control has pushed some people away.
Yeah, that's okay.
But
I'll come to visit you during the winter months, sir. The winter months.
Yeah, I like to burn fires. I find it ritualistic. But like I've used a lot of natural gas this year. It's very fucking expensive, and it's also bad for the planet.
Really
and wood
interesting.
is basically a waste resource here.
Interesting.
What's that?
Oh, everything I was reading in Maine was like, oh yeah, if their electricity costs have gone up over the past couple of years because they have a very similar company to PG&E, kind of like barging in on their shit, whereas previously it was several companies. And so basically, they're like, oh my God, I would rather spend money on the natural gas than pay the electrical costs.
Yeah, and if you live out in the country, dude, like propane delivery and shit, like, is fucking really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd be way better off building efficiently if you live on hilly land, trying to orient your house so it has mass behind it. If anything, even just built up against where the back of the house is against mass, and then like passive solar. Would really go a long way. I live in the suburbs. Like I wound up replacing my HVAC system because I wanted something, but we still largely we were talking about some improvements to make this year, one of which is a whole house fan, right? Mm-hmm. Because as is, we already do largely try to use passive methods. So at night, all the windows are open, the fans are going. Yep. And except the other thing too with the HVAC is it's fucking smoky. So sometimes like that's part of the reason we replaced it, because like you can't always passively cool the house because the air quality is like fucking AQI of like 450 or something.
I didn't know about that. So basically you turn on the cooling aspect of your air conditioning and it gets smoky.
No. What I'm saying is we can't always open the windows and passively cool the house because sometimes the air quality outside
sometimes
is
Yosemite is burning.
Long-term consequences.
Oh yeah.
To breathing that kind of air for any length of time.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah, and I got a new HVAC system as a fucking climate adaptation, which try and wrap your mind around that. But if you live in a place with a fucking AQI of 400, 450 for like 3-4 weeks on end, and the temperatures are like usually when it's real smoky, the temperatures are lower than they would be.
Yeah, because the smoke blocks out.
They're reflecting, but it's still 90 degrees or 88 degrees outside and super smoky, and you can't cool it off. It just gets like humid and shit. It's great.
Hey, I left Chico on account of Chico being too smoky. I arrived in Fresno and was greeted with the same goddamn smoke. There's no escaping it. There's no escaping it. It's the whole fucking valley.
There is a place to go to get out of it.
Oh, is it Maine?
No, it's the fucking Redwood Coast, bro. You go up there and like even under the most extreme climate scenarios, they're looking at losing like 4 or 5 inches of normal precip per year, or like so they'll have 5 inches less like 30, 40 years from now than they normally get, and it's still like fucking 40 inches of rain.
Pretty good.
It's like we've had like 10.
Yeah, no. This
season is less.
Yeah, it's been so bad, man. I've had plants out and tried to let only the rains water them. No. All plants would die under these conditions. Any plant that's going to feed you.
Yeah, any plant that's adapted to that like can survive, but like it's mostly perennial bunch grasses, and they'll go dormant and they'll just dry up, but like a core of it'll stay alive.
Yeah.
And then when it rains, then it'll fucking grow again, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of plants like this. There's like buckeye and other things like that are all like summer deciduous. So like when it gets fucking hot and there's no rain, they're like, fuck this, I'm just gonna go dormant now. And they drop all their leaves and then spend the energy ripening their seed.
Yep.
And then they're in winter dormancy basically early, right? Like, and then sometime after the first rain and it gets cool, they'll actually grow leaves when it's cold, and their leaves don't freeze. So they're adapted to living during the winter and sleeping during the summer because it's fucking hot and there's no water. Anyway, speaking of water, most of the population in the United States
needs water. Did you know that?
Needs water? No. Lives on the East Coast. And as both of us have lived on the East Coast because we were both in the military, and when we were in the military, we were stationed on the East Coast.
Yes.
It fucking rains like
it
all
rains
the time.
I was actually talking with someone. We went out for fucking Easter brunch. Got all you can drink, in case you couldn't tell, mimosas. And I ended up talking to this gal who was from fucking Virginia. And I was just like, oh man, I lived out there. I had like my first hurricane was in South Carolina, but my second and my last were in Virginia. She's just like, yeah, it's a terrible place to live, but at least it's wet, Yeah.
And like, so since most of the population of the United States, by and large, lives in places where there are perennial streams and it rains, micro hydro to me, like we all do this like large scale hydro that government, the Army Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Land Management get massive fucking raging boners for big dams and big fancy projects. We were talking about vanity projects last week. How like,
they
just want to go to a ribbon cutting and get the promotion.
Anytime someone talks about more dams in California, I say, okay, great, go ahead and build that dam, but what rain is going to fill it, fucker?
Yeah, more dams in California. They're still fighting for the fucking
They're still fucking fighting for more reservoirs, more dams. They just want to contain all the water that doesn't fucking exist.
That doesn't. I mean, that's the point too. I saw signs and like, oh, we're talking about doing sites again because we need more water. And I'm like, Shasta and Oroville are like 20% of fucking capacity.
Yeah.
Like
there's a massive deficit.
Build a big bucket. It doesn't matter if it doesn't fucking rain.
No, but people don't seem to understand. That's the thing. They want to spend.
But if it does rain, they want to catch it all.
Yeah, but they want to spend non-existent tax dollars to fucking buy things that'll never like pay them for themselves. You're not gonna get that rain. I'm fucking sorry. It ain't coming. It doesn't care how much money you invest in storage. It ain't fucking coming.
But we could do a lot, and that's going to be a subject for another day to manage our what water does fall better.
Oh yes.
Including like a bunch of like small earthworks all over the fucking hillsides.
I would say I love what you're talking about. I have a feeling it's like basically like stamping holes, letting the hillsides absorb more water, right?
Right, and recharging
aquifers and whatnot.
Aquifers and artesian wells.
Yeah.
So that like if you dig some earthworks up here, then where you can punch a well right there and catch that water, and it'll go underground where it moves really slow and the water quality also improves.
Yeah.
Most of the time, depending on your substrate, right?
My question is how much go ahead.
No.
I was gonna say how much do you have to pay like teenagers in order to do these basic like works? Like I mean, it happened in World War II. They did all the
right.
service works
WPA.
and things like that. Yeah. I want that. I want
A lot
fucking
of
people
the
at work.
ponds in across the foothills here, like Nevada County, like almost like every other property has a pond. There's a lot of properties up here, like in Butte Creek Canyon and stuff that also have ponds. I think all of those were WPA ponds. And that was mostly like, oh, let's go build some ponds so that people can grow agriculture.
Yeah.
So it was about increasing a region's productivity by public investment,
Right.
And public resources being deployed across the countryside to help develop the capacity for the people that live there to produce a surplus to sell in a market.
Right.
Like, and so it was about economic development.
I'm not opposed to that. Like, we need some economic development.
No, we
right
absolutely
now.
and we need to treat our water differently. But if you live in an area with lots of water, like on the East Coast where all the people are, like there is a Vortex one too, not his little DIY thing, but like there's also Vortex ones that need very little head and basically like my fucking background is making me all.
We haven't watched the video yet, by the way. We should probably play the video.
No, I know, but they're different than his system. But they basically also work with very little head,
so smaller
and
amounts
produce
of
a lot
head.
more than his does.
Okay.
So there are systems, commercial systems that can be used on streams, and that's really, to me, far more cost effective to put in 100 of those rather than one gigantic dam with a couple of turbines.
That could be interesting for Sierra Nevada, as they're out of North Carolina right now. Right. Interesting. Okay, so let's play this video.
We'll play this clip, and then we'll talk just briefly about micro hydro, and then we'll probably move through the last few fairly quickly.
Bye-bye. Ready to go.
Go.
Behind me is a pond that is several feet deep, and there is a dam on this side, which drops approximately 8 feet from this point here down to the rock. And then there is an additional drop from that rock down to the bottom for a total of 15 feet. So you can see there is a couple of 100 gallons coming across this all the time. And here is the intake to his unit. He's got a screen cage that prevents debris from entering into the pipe. And then he's got a 6-inch pipe elbowed down into the water here. See if I can move you across here without dropping the camera. Pipe goes over about 6 feet and then 90s around this little concrete pillar. And that, you can see here, goes over to the turbine. And this is all 6-inch pipe up to the turbine that Spencer has provided here. 3-phase, we'll get to that here in just a bit. But you can see there is about an 8-foot pipe dropping down, another 90 which heads over here, and there's going to be a demonstration of how this unit is turned on here in just a moment. And from the edge of the white pipe, it then upgrades to an 8-inch pipe, creating a vacuum with a Venturi effect. So we'll be demonstrating all of that here in just a bit. Because the other end of this pipe here is sticking down into the water, the siphon has to be created to get the water from the top of the dam.
Did you miss your timestamp? You got to unmute, homie.
Muted. There we go. Yeah. So, yeah, I did miss my timestamp, but that's
it's okay.
Super cool because I like the idea. Like, later on in the video, it shows him using an electrically powered pump, but you wouldn't need anything other than just a basic, pump of any kind. You could just, literally do it with
hand
a simple, simple hand pump. Don't gif that.
Don't gif it. No. So I guess my point was, and we kind of already more or less discussed what I wanted to discuss about this.
That's why I was.
Is it like
watch all the videos?
The population of the United States is concentrated in areas where like this is super fucking common. Having a creek like that in your backyard is or in your neighborhood is super common. And I don't know if you got to it in the clip because I actually
wish to claim the contrary.
You do.
Having a creek in your backyard is common?
No, in your neighborhood.
In my neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, no, not in your neighborhood.
Okay,
I'm
other
saying that they're
neighborhoods.
all over the East Coast.
Okay, absolutely.
That is my point. There's fucking streams everywhere, dude.
Yes.
Like, I mean,
Okay.
look at it like a hydrology map
Yeah,
compared
yeah.
to like California, where like if you're not in like certain areas of the mountains where like the terrain is not really conducive to doing something like that,
You'll never
like,
take a nap near a creek.
right? Yeah, there's like other than that, like where people live, all the rivers are like super fucking flat and generally corralled to
Yeah, it's true.
Corralled behind levees or whatever to prevent flooding. But on the East Coast, like when I was in Delaware, there's like, dude, like there's 6 or 7, they called them rivers, like just within like 15 or 20 miles north and south and west of where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them had like that, and some of them had less. I was mentioning before the video clip played, there's actually Vortex ones that can use less head.
Mm-hmm.
That's about 15 feet. And it cuts his bill by 2/3. So
yes, and it was actually only 8 feet.
Oh, was it 8? Okay.
Yeah, and he talks about breaking up the vortexes with nothing more than a tennis ball.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, and
for anyone who doesn't know, vortices are when the water spins up and it sucks in more air than it does water, and that's not going to spin your turbine quite so well. And so you want to mostly spin up water as best you can.
Right, exactly. So the tennis ball kind of just prevents that.
Yeah,
it breaks them up, the surface tension.
Yeah.
So that you're getting more water in. But the point is that produces constantly. You know, I didn't hear about drought, but it seemed like that's kind of the area. And I think it was North Carolina. The description said
they talked about it later, and he said it was 4 months out of every year.
Oh, only 4 months?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's not nearly as impressive.
Yeah.
But like, if you lived on a stream where you could get that all the time, that's like 530 watts feeding.
Even a quarter of the
all
year,
the
it's a lot less, when it comes to the full year. Like, we need to take into account just whatever the land that we're living on can offer,
right,
even if it can't give us everything all the time.
Right. And that's the point. I mean, it cut his bill by 60%, right?
Yeah.
Like
your chickens, how many eggs do they give you? Like, how little do you spend on chicken meat, eggs, anything of that nature every year? You're reducing your food bill by quite a lot.
Yeah. Between like broiler chickens and egg
that's what I'm saying. Like it's the very same thing here. It's not everything, and it shouldn't be. It's the best we can do.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about technologies that are, in my opinion, never going to come to pass, but are nice ideas.
Do it. All right. So the first video we have, it starts on like 1950s footage, and I love that.
Gotta love that.
All right. Boop.
It takes an insane amount of energy to produce the heated plasma. So right now the power that you put into a fusion reaction is always higher than the thermal power that you get back out of it. To assess how well a reactor performs is referred to as the fusion energy gain factor, or the simple Q with a ratio. Basically, you just want a Q value higher than 1, which is that thermal power break-even point within the reactor. But we're not even close to break-even. The Joint European Torus, or JET, held a record ratio of 0.67. But the National Ignition Facility, NIF, just recently broke that with a Q of 0.7. But it's really important to note that Q isn't accounting for the full power and electricity required to run the facility, and how much electricity it can actually generate from that reaction. Q is just about the thermal power in versus the thermal power out. For the full picture that accounts for all those additional costs and converting heat into electricity, basically producing more electricity than it takes to run the facility, we'd most likely be looking at a Q somewhere between 10 and 25. There's a lot of moving pieces. We have to learn to walk before we can run, and hitting a Q of 1 or higher is us learning to walk.
Yeah, that's really profound. You got to walk before you can run.
That's where I chose to end it. But yeah, well,
no, I understand.
I mean, it really is like everyone expects nuclear power, or fusion specifically, to just be this thing that immediately takes off. But like, how long did it take us to go from simple burning of trees to burning of coal to fossil fuels to nuclear, fission, nuclear to fusion. And I think we've kind of gotten used to the idea of just like everything happens really, really fast because we're in that stratum right now where, new things come along every 10 to 15 years, and you can just expect them to keep coming along at that point. And
Bro,
what?
I'm not that old, and you're not that old.
I'm not
and
either.
The first fucking video games I played were
Yeah, they were 8-bit.
On a fucking not the little hard floppies, but the big actual floppies.
Pew, pew, pew. I didn't have floppies when I first played video games. I was on Nintendo. You had the cartridges, not the small ones. The big
computer
ones.
games. I mean, you had to put the what is it, 5 1/4 inch fucking where
absolutely.
floppy comes from. The name floppy because they were all.
Well, if you want to play some fucking, I'm like, do you want to die of dysentery? If so, insert your floppy disk right now.
Yeah, dude, and you'd have to like load one in, and then it would download the information, and then you'd have to like put it out and put in another one, and it was like 8 discs.
You don't think we're depressing these young people right now as we're talking about?
Real quickly, I know we're talking about fusion reactions, but like my parents or my parents. My children, I am the parent in this situation. My children were who was popular on TikTok when you were a kid? We're like
nobody. TikTok
didn't. TikTok's been around for like 2 fucking years, children. It's like
YouTube. It's younger than your punk ass.
YouTube wasn't even a fucking thing until I was almost out of college. I remember when like YouTube started to become into popular use. And that was in like 2005, 2006. I mean, I think it existed a little while before. I think I was in my 30s. It takes a while for people to adopt.
I think I was in my 30s by the time I learned about fucking TikTok. Oh no, I'm sorry. YouTube. Yeah.
No. Yeah, it was when we were in college is when like all the big. I mean, when in South Park did the episode where like they brought in all the fucking YouTube memes. That was very early in YouTube and viral YouTube videos.
Chocolate rain.
Yep, the chocolate rain guy and the Britney chick,
the groundhog.
Yeah, and all sorts of other ones, right? The 2 girls, 1 cup or whatever, all that shit. That was all like 2005, I think, maybe a little earlier. But anyway, I was at least in college by then. Like Facebook didn't even exist until like I was in college.
Yep, it moves fast nowadays.
Yeah, and so I think that's what you were saying. Like people don't realize it takes some time. It does take time, and you're right. It did take a while to go from just burning trees to burning peat bogs, like basically
right. Finding
first
coal
turning those
ground.
into coal and burning that, and then like it really wasn't until they could harness these I guess conventional or unconventional like natural fuels like peat and wood
liquids
to power a steam engine to be able to pump the water out of a coal seam.
Yeah,
and then that's how they were able to access like older coal.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And I was going to say, ultimately, it seems like the ability to find liquid fuel, like that seems to be in everything that I've read, where we kind of shifted to this whole different environment. Where we could move around a battery of a battery of electricity very easily. Whether that
for
electricity,
energy,
well, it ultimately ends up as electricity for most cases.
Man, I mean, like
transportation is 40%. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like 85% of the energy that out of fossil fuels is just fucking heat.
Yeah, it just ends up getting used as heat. Well, due to the Carnot engine, that's like 37% efficient at best. That's the thing is, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit for everyone. Everyone thinks nuclear power. Oh, it's so cool. It's fucking magic. No, you know what it is? It's a fucking Carnot engine with 37% efficiency maximum. What you feed into it caps out at 37%. Theoretical. Right now, we're at like 23.5%. Trying to work on that perfect thing.
This might be a little older because I was looking at fusion last year, maybe 6 months ago or something. Yeah. I could have sworn that there was some kind of breakthrough where I don't know if it was just in like their mathematics where they're like, this is possible, or if it was actually like done in a smaller scale model. But I thought they were pushing closer to that Q of 10 that he was talking about. But I could be wrong. You probably know the issue better than I do.
Yeah. So currently the biggest problem with fusion and fission is that you are just harnessing the heat generated as a byproduct of the reaction that you're doing, whether it's a fission or a fusion reaction. And every time they come out with a new, like, oh yeah, we're harnessing this or that, it's just repeating the same line that is, we've managed to sustain fusion energy with diminishingly smaller gains on, well, no, actually, sorry, I'm sorry, diminishingly, increasingly larger gains. It is true that they are getting better and better at it. When it comes to transferring the heat from either fissioning materials or fusing them, we're getting better at both and creating basically, what do you call them? Heat engines, steam engines. Like that's ultimately what it all boils down to is just turning a turbine, getting electricity, and we're getting better and better at turning both fission and fusion into it, but fusion at a higher rate.
Right. And I think most of that's like cultural, probably, like the anti-nuclear movement. I mean, they're correct too. I mean, it's fucking terrible. Then you have spent fuel, and then they're trying to find a market for that so that they don't lose money.
No, I'm going to counter you on that one. Everybody talks about like how much spent fuel there is, and it amounts to like barrels per year, like 55-gallon drums that you yourself could lift up and move around.
Well, I mean, uranium's pretty fucking dense.
Well,
it'd probably be pretty heavy.
Hey, we're talking about volume, bro. Right. All right. You're right. You might not be able to move it around, but I'm saying that volume-wise, the amount of waste generated is very small. And one of the more convincing arguments that I've heard and research is the idea that the amount of radioactive material that is produced by burning fossil fuels is actually in excess of that escapes, because honestly nothing escapes from nuclear power plants. Everything is very carefully regulated, and so
unless there's like a fucking earthquake and a fucking tsunami.
That I can have some numbers for that. I do have numbers for that. Anyway,
so when you hear that there's just like radiation pouring into the Pacific Ocean, that's like, oh no, that's not a problem.
No,
they're full of shit. It's a conspiracy.
No. I don't say, bro. It's not only not full of shit. It's not a conspiracy. It's the fact that it is a massive fucking ocean and a very little amount of radiation.
Sure. So it's kind of like putting a pinch of salt in a whole fucking pot of water. You can taste the water. It doesn't taste salty.
Exactly.
Right. I get that. Except then they're like, oh, let's change the standards. Like we have a particular standard for like imported fish.
Dude, you're getting cut off.
What do you mean?
You're actually getting a little bit robotic. Oh my God. Taylor might be right. You might be getting cut off due to the things you're saying right now. You're going robotic. As soon as you start talking about nuclear power and questioning it, you literally got robotic on your end.
Well, I don't know what could cause that because I have the fastest fucking internet I've ever had in my life right now. And it's like, dude, it's brand new fucking network.
It's the man. I think it's the man. I think you might be.
Well, I mean, all I was talking, because I was about to talk about Hillary Clinton. Am I fucking robot-y every time I want to fucking criticize?
No, actually,
it's my turn, Clinton.
Talking about Clinton, you're actually doing really well.
Okay, great. Then I'm going to keep talking about it. When she was Secretary of State, she helped orchestrate the FDA or USDA. Changing the standard for the amount of radiation and the amount of toxins in a fucking fish so that fishmongers could still import fish that's caught in these areas where the pollutants concentrate. And they just said, oh, well, I mean, before they said it was bad, but like if there's so much radiation that like if we don't import the fish, then these guys lose money. So we'll just say that this amount of radiation is okay for you to eat.
Ironically, that is less radiated or less radiated. I mean, related to the actual amount of radiation that you might get from like a spill or something like that, and more related to the amount of what do you call it?
Bioaccumulation.
Yeah, bioaccumulated mercury.
I see.
And
Well,
so
it's
they
not
end up-
just mercury.
well, there's
I think.
more. Yeah, but I mean,
I think it's
mercury
just-
is the classic.
Yeah, mercury is the go-to example because I mean it was used in industrial processes for decades and decades and decades, and we just dumped it into fucking rivers and shit. Like we have come a very,
Did
very
you know
long
it makes
way.
fish taste good?
We've come a very long way. But when I lived in Delaware, is the state that DuPont built, and now it's like an onshore tax haven, and it's where the president from MBNA comes from the credit card company fucking savior senator, who's now the president, and
We're so
like,
fucked.
just like Weekend at Bernie's. Like we did get Bernie, but not the Bernie Sanders. We got like Weekend at Bernie's Bernie, like where they're just like holding up a fucking dead guy. Like
No,
pretending he's still alive.
I would have appreciated that because that would have meant that we could actually get what we want by filling his mouth with the words.
Yeah.
So to speak. You know?
You want to write off student loans by
Yeah.
executive action. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. We do not want to go to war.
All right.
with
I
Russia.
literally, no, that. Oh my god. So I was thinking. So I was thinking about that. I can't
derailed
remember.
us. Talking
No,
about
it's good. It's
Hillary
good.
Clinton's fucking Blinky the three-eyed fish.
Yeah. Fuck energy, man. I don't want to talk about energy right now. You know what I was thinking about earlier is I was in the shower and I was thinking about war. And I was thinking about fucking
War, okay.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about war. I was thinking about all the energy wasted in war. I was thinking about fucking
Real.
Yeah, like that's
Real.
what like as someone who's just like, oh, I want, more science. I want more fucking, large hadron colliders. I want more of everything, bigger, better. Like, when they're talking about, oh yeah, we want to go to war. We want to waste energy on tanks and planes and blah blah blah. Just like, you motherfuckers need to just stop for a goddamn second.
Bro, like the Chinese premier, he like basically said that exact thing like 2 years ago. I think
I read it.
And it's
No,
like,
I read it.
Well, what is China doing? Is it corporate espionage? Or you're just stealing other people's hard work? And he's like, no, we've spent the last 30 years like developing our economy and our economic capacities while you guys pissed it away on fucking bullshit in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yep.
And he's like, fucking facts, bro. Mic drop. Fucking
Boom.
Chinese mic drop. Because it's absolutely fucking
Micro
correct.
drop. Yeah.
And the other thing we talk about, but go back to fusion, but like,
Yeah.
and we talk about wasting energy on war, right? And my go-to example is like, okay, we have limit, like, we're never gonna have limitless. That's just that's not how.
No, it's impossible.
Physics
We live on a
works.
planet.
There
with
is
physics,
there's
yeah.
no end. There's not even an end to the universe technically, like right, like, or it's not even infinite, right? Like there is enough finite end to it. So nothing is forever.
Yeah.
Except death and taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, my point being is that like, so we talked about energy efficiency, and now we're talking about producing energy and the difficulty of it, and then employing it for useful purposes, not for war, but for in your case, scientific exploration. I would say like health and dignity and quality of life.
Those are all science related. Yeah, they're all science related.
I mean, dignity and quality of life don't require much science. We just it's more like a social structural thing. But I mean, you can be
scientific.
I mean, but yes, scientific advancements can help us. But like my point is like, okay, cool. So we find a way to make nuclear waste less of a problem.
Yeah.
Do we really want to use uranium as a finite resource?
It is finite. Yeah.
We did not do the how it's made clip, but are we going to put that one in the show notes?
It is in the show notes. It's already in the show notes. But basically, how it's wasteful.
It's subsidized by fossil fuels.
Yeah.
All those robots that they use for mining uranium, if they're underground in a lake and they have to fucking freeze.
Somebody dug down there to get there. Yeah.
It's a really complicated, really energy and really resource intensive process.
Yeah.
And my point is, okay, if we're going to do that, do we really need like the next flashy billboard in Times Square? Do we really need that? Do we need all of these like kiosks outside the school that have like an advertisement for the dentist that gave to the football team and then the time and temperature? Do we really need to spend energy on that shit? And I think that that's the thing about like endless energy we keep
lights
because we don't want to be forced to be like, how should we use energy? We just want more and more and more of it. And we're gonna, the whole theme of the show is to kind of talk about these grappling with these things of how do we just accept that like things aren't going to continuously, endlessly improve.
Well, and
how do we find? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that is ultimately, you know, the question that we ask with our channel is like, at the end of American Empire, like how do you cope with the lack of infinite energy, which is the lie we've been promised, really is what it boils down to.
Right. And so some of these things I think we should be innovating in this. I mean, I've been a member of the Green Party for a long while and been involved with the party at periods in my life until I burn out, and then I retreat, and then eventually will find my way back for a year and then burn myself out. Anyway, this is not a critique of the Green Party, but one of the things that our presidential candidate said in 2016 was like, we need like a World War II scale effort that would include weatherizing houses and installing geothermal heat pumps and building new housing that adopts principles like passive.
It's literally just modernizing America.
Right, exactly.
And I want to modernize all of it.
Massive in like Manhattan Project level investments in technologies.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is that we might be like, hey, we're in $30 billion deep and we are no closer. Do you want to keep spending money?
Yeah.
No,
and
this other thing came up. Let's shift that funding to something that might be better.
And that's what gets me is
like the mushroom or hempcrete stuff, or like,
well, it's just all the cost with none of the results, and we're okay to accept it because I guess there's wars and we fight in America. Like I don't get what the advantage is from people.
Strategic control of resources, like it is still about like,
but they're not going to come to us. I don't get any of those fucking resources.
They don't come to us. I mean, they do eventually.
I mean, I guess like I get. Hey, maybe this is where you're right. My temperature is 7 degrees cooler than yours.
So let's. Do you have another part of this fusion clip? Because we kind
of many clips.
Are we gonna get to them all?
No, not at all.
Okay,
it's okay. Ready?
Go.
Focus is on just the Q ratio for the plasma reaction itself. Once we hit that, the focus will shift towards overall power gain. In 2025, the massive international fusion project that's known as ITER is supposed to start producing super hot plasma with a Q greater than 10 in France. Now, even though the project was born in the 1980s, construction of the tokamak only started in 2007. Once it's complete, ITER will be the world's largest fusion rig, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Due to its size and its scope, it's taking a long time and tens of billions of dollars to build. Plus, it's designed to be a testing facility and not a working reactor. And it won't reach full operation until 2035. So even if it's 100% successful, we still need to then go through the whole process of building up the final working reactor design. Now, I know that sounds a lot like we're still 30 years away from having a fully operational fusion reactor, but there has been some electrifying breakthroughs recently from smaller and more nimble approaches like what Dr. Greenwald has been working on. And one of the biggest challenges with MCF fusion reactors is the incredible magnetic field that they have to generate to contain the plasma. Massive magnets ringing the rig, or the donut, create an intense magnetic field. This invisible bubble traps the blisteringly hot electrically charged slurry in midair near the center of the reactor. Being kept away from the rig walls, the plasma won't melt them. And just this September, we found out that 2021 is going out with a nuclear fusion bang. But before getting to this big piece of fusion news,
no, I'm just kidding.
The fans didn't get that. The fans didn't get that.
The fans didn't?
No. One of them. I cut it off before we got to
before the ad.
Yes, but we don't need to talk about it.
No, but seriously, so that is kind of what I was thinking, because I had heard that there was like some things that were happening that looked promising.
Yeah.
But you're right. I'd rather. Do you know what the development? Like, I forget the class. What's the class of the new class of aircraft carrier that they haven't even like fielded one unit yet?
The last I heard of was Reagan, and I refuse to pay attention anymore because I don't give a shit.
Because you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Fucking keeping the CBs at work, you know.
No, I don't.
Huge industries, massive cities, just dedicated to building warships.
Okay. So what?
No, I'm just kidding.
What are you saying? Are you saying that I should absolutely give a shit about
No.
the
I'm just
military
saying
industrial
that
complex?
Or like the F-35. Like by the time they finish just the R&D portion,
Yeah,
and they field like a couple squadrons of units, it's like
they give up on it a lot of
$1.2
times.
trillion or some shit like that.
And a lot of times they just give up on the whole project.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I mean, not in the military.
No, they absolutely would just like wash the whole thing, make a new one. It's okay because we have this old one.
Right.
The last one I heard about in terms of aircraft carriers was the Reagan class.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't you?
But those things cost like, billions of dollars a piece, and that's to field a unit, right? Like,
yeah.
And then, but it's like, oh, well, we need a new class of aircraft carrier because China bought an aircraft carrier. It's like China bought a single aircraft carrier.
So we're
from
gonna make
fucking
10.
The old Soviet version.
Mm-hmm.
They bought it used, and what I read at the time, and this was like almost 10 fucking years ago now.
Yeah.
But like what I read at the time is like the Chinese military was like recruiting from like other places the technical team to come and train their people. Like, because they like they're like, cool, we have this thing, but like we're not trained on it. No one is trained to like fix it or use it.
Understand it even necessarily.
Yeah, and
everything's
just basic stuff.
Yeah.
And so like, why do we need? My point is that they said, oh, it's $30 billion, and that we haven't really even got anywhere. It's like, right, but like we've spent like 30 billion compared to like 3 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. It's like a factor of 100.
It's literally a magnitude is what you're looking for.
Right, exactly. So like 30 billion is a lot of resources. I would see 30 billion to weatherize schools and houses and public housing.
But literally 3 trillion is only 10 times as much. But we literally cannot comprehend 3 trillion.
Right. But I mean, we can comprehend it. It's called how much we spend on just a few weapons platforms in the United States military.
Nobody understands those numbers, man. People don't get what trillion is. Like,
it's 1,000 billion, I thought.
Yeah, there are so many videos on the internet that try to explain the difference between 100 billion and a trillion. Like literally just 1,000 times. Or sorry, 10 times. And then they try to explain like 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. And they're like, this is literally the frame that you will live your life in ever. You might be someone who retires with $1 million. And they try to relate 1 million to a trillion, and people just lose their fucking mind. It's like I could literally buy an island. I could buy everything that my family has ever wanted. You
could buy a private jet. You start hanging out with Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump.
Who do they know that I might want to know? What are you talking? I don't understand. Oh, shh. Anyway,
demonetized. He totally killed himself.
We were never monetized.
Oh, that's true. I think you have to have a certain like level of subscription in watching people.
So what you're saying is, fuck the government. Capitalism sucks. Epstein didn't kill himself, and y'all can fuck yourselves. All right.
All right. You have a good night.
I think we're not monetized anyway.
Let us finish this up because I am hungry and I do have some homework.
Oh, I'm not hungry at all, man. You got to adjust your schedule. Let's do.
I'm also dieting, so.
Oh.
I'm fucking hungry all the time. But my bra size went down and fucking. No, I'm just kidding. My bra size went down a level. No, I'm just kidding.
Breeder reactors. I'm doing it.
Do it. You having an issue?
There we go.
Yeah. That was awesome.
No, it was terrible.
Oh, what's terrible? Oh, the waste.
All the waste. It's terrible. Okay.
So summarize what he said for me.
No, sir. No, I refuse.
I'm just saying, thorium and the future of nuclear energy. Yeah, what is thorium? Is just an element, right? Where in the periodic table is that? What's its atomic weight? Like, is it in the fucking breakout section at the bottom?
It's in the breakout section at the bottom. It's about 2 to the left of.
I don't need to know exactly where it is. So it's a heavier element.
You did need to know.
No,
you
did ask, didn't I?
You did. It's Dick. I don't need to know. Fucking tell me.
Fuck, man. I'm like 75% of the way there. I asked about its atomic weight, and I asked if it was in the little section at the bottom. I sounded smart for a fucking second, and then you fucked me up. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
go ahead, man. I cut you off.
I don't even know if we're live at this point. Let me check.
I got eyeballs at the top. It says on air.
Okay, good. I'm good with that. All right. So anyway, yeah. So this bro, he's over here and he's talking about thorium, and he's basically saying that on its own, it ain't nuclear. It's not going to be radioactive. But if you activate it with neutrons, it becomes radioactive, and it goes ahead and it becomes several different elements. And that is ultimately what happens with nuclear or elements is they change all around. They are transuranic. That's right. They are trans, man. They are all over the place. They're beyond uranium. And so when you hit thorium with any number of neutrons, it basically just splits off and it becomes uranium, plutonium, any number of very radioactive materials, but it limits itself to like a 300-year. I think it's 300. Yeah. Well, it limits itself to a 300-year half-life, and so you end up with a reactor that generates power and leaves you with a very quickly decaying waste. And the thing is, that's really good. Like you're going to end up just being able to store that on site. And the biggest worry is that a lot of the things that thorium makes can be weaponized.
Yeah.
And that was what, hey man, that was why like America was just like, oh yeah, we don't want to allow, this country and that country to have these sorts of reactors because they can make nuclear weapons from it. So like, that's why thorium suffers, is it can be used to breed weapons grade radioactive materials.
Yeah. That's fucking wild, man. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know that there was a lot of protest against it, nuclear and stuff. I know that there were a lot of veteran political organizers in the spaces I'm in. That's where they got most of their organizing experience. I've never been too concerned about it, but like, obviously, like, partly because like they succeeded in many ways. I know like San Onofre like has a problem with their waste piling up, and also the fact that like it's built like a city basically built up around it, and it's like maybe we should locate dangerous things like this a bit further, from population centers, which seems to be, even if they're not particularly dangerous, like seems to be like a good idea. Like imagine if that fucking we were talking about Chernobyl like a number of episodes ago. Like imagine if that wasn't like you didn't have to jump on a train to go to the reactor or whatever, and if it was like right in the middle of a fucking major city, like they could have been really bad. I mean, it was really bad. It could have been a lot worse.
Surprisingly, like Russia, the former Soviet Union did a pretty good job of like planting it remotely.
Yeah.
It's almost like they were thinking about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they were. I mean, in the United States, I think most of the reactors are like in fairly populated areas.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
at the
then-
same time, all of our disposal units are far away from there and weren't really discussed or decided upon before placing them. Like America has done a ridiculously bad job of storing waste.
I mean, it's the same thing, right? Businesses are like, oh, well, you want to ban my plastic bags? And then they do this grass or astroturf bullshit where they get these fucking people mad. No, nanny state wants to tell you what kind of bag you can use. But then they're like, and the plastic bag manufacturers are like, oh, no, fuck no. We're not going to pay for disposal.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to pay for landfills. We just want to be able to make bags and you pay for the landfills.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's just going to always be, you know, a struggle, right, between wealthy interests and public interest, I guess. Even though politicians mostly serve corporations, like there are those kind of token gestures they use because they can totally fuck us over on like not giving us health care or cutting funding from education or all these things. We can get away with that if we get some red meat, like, oh, we're going to fucking ban chicken cages or whatever other fucking bullshit the state of California does. I mean, I don't want to say that's bullshit. We have the highest animal welfare standards. I think one of the highest in the fucking world, like higher than a lot of Europeans countries. And I'm okay with that. I produce animals on my property, but like I don't do it commercially, and there's not the pressure of performance as there is in a commercial operation. So like I'm not going to ever treat my animals that way anyway. Right. Like, you know, I have an ethical issue with that. But you know, I understand complaining about regulation, I guess is the moral of the story. But like,
thank you. Yes.
At the same time, like there are sometimes public welfare things that need to happen. And one of those might be proper disposal of nuclear waste, whether it's like, I do agree though with the idea that like the threat is like generally way overstated.
Oh yeah. I would recommend anyone who wants to get a little bit more about nuclear power, go ahead and visit Kyle Hill on YouTube. He does a great series where he talks about nuclear energy and the times it's failed us and how they're not as bad as you might think.
Yeah. And so we get to this point where it's like, okay, cool. Like, obviously there's a lot of like fossil fuel subsidies that go into nuclear.
Oh, way too many. Yeah.
There's also the whole like that energy is not portable except as electricity.
Right. We didn't get a chance to get there. I had so much more lined up we didn't make.
Yeah, let's just briefly touch on some of the subjects and refer everybody to the description down below. And while you're down there, click like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up.
I'm gonna have to add
Let us beat the algorithm.
Damn it. We don't own it. So I had some PBS Space Time with Michael Dowd. I was talking about how there were a lot of misunderstandings about nuclear power. We already spoke about a few of those, but also that there were downsides to the modern way of running it, which is just running it as a slow nuclear reactor, and how you wanted to minimize the amount of waste fuel by running a fast nuclear reactor. Go ahead and watch it. It is great. But then how thorium is not by itself a nuclear thing, and you can absolutely breed it and make it into a nuclear fuel, and that leads to thorium reactors and molten salt storages, and then you end up with the idea that these things are very portable. You don't necessarily need to have a massive plant, and you can move it around. There's actually been some research into moving it around like a taco truck, where you're just like, okay, we put it on here, we go from town to town, and we
and I guess what I was going to say is that one of the things that a lot of these can't do, we mentioned it with the water, right? Like, you kind of got to live somewhere where there's water, but where there is water, we should be using this more than we are. Right. And similarly, like with the fission reactors and stuff like that, like why oil is so fucking important is because it's energy density, number one, and number two,
Transportable.
it's portability.
Yeah.
We can put it in our fucking gas tank, or we can fill a few jerry cans and put them in the back of our car and drive, and then fill it back up.
Well,
and
whereas it's too easy to say you can't put the sun in your pocket.
Right. And like with nuclear power, like also there's a lot of industrial processes like that require massive amounts of heat.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get heat from electricity, right? Like that's what arc welding is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but the point is that like every transformation, there's a lot of losses. And so rather than just burning the fossil fuel to produce electricity or for heat, and then using systems to capture the waste heat and co-generate electricity through waste heat from industrial processes, in nuclear, you're having the fission reaction and you're doing the steam and it's turning the turbine, it's making electricity. And I'm sure there's ways to utilize waste heat in that situation, but largely like once it's electricity, like it has a limited uses, which is why they keep talking about electric cars and shit, is because they think that we'll eventually get to the point where then electricity is abundant enough, we can put it in our car and go far enough. But I'm cutting you off. Go ahead, man.
No, you're absolutely right. It does absolutely take almost an infinite supply of electricity. And regardless of how that electricity is produced, that is the ultimate end need. Like, too often we talk about fucking solar, we talk about wind, we talk about whatever. Who the fuck gives a shit? It's an end to a means, and the means is electricity. Electricity powers our computers, powers our phones, and ultimately it can power our cars. And that's what we fucking need is electricity. I don't give a shit about how it's produced. Like, I want it. I need it.
Except we don't just need electricity, though, man.
We do, though. We do.
No, because what I'm saying is that you can't build a fucking electric car without fossil fuels, and electricity can't. I'm saying
that.
Show me the electric-powered mining equipment that goes and crushes rock and heats it up. Show me that being automated or electric.
So I think what you're saying,
powered by the sun, and I'll believe you.
So I think what you're saying is currently we rely on previously solar power, aka fossil fuels, to run what we need.
Stored solar energy.
Yeah. To run
the only
mines.
True battery, by the way.
To run the mine. No, not the only true battery. You're saying that we rely upon that to run the mines. Well, guess what, man? When the fucking fossil is gone, we're still going to generate electricity via solar panels, and we're going to use it to charge batteries to run mines. Like, until it is.
That's what I'm saying. So how do you show me where the Coke plant is run on electric arcs?
No, I'm not going to say that, because it isn't. It's a terrible thing. Like, there's no reason to believe that people that are, hooked on fossil fuels will suddenly find a different way to use fossil fuels and do it well, and make it so that people are taken care of. That ain't happening. Like, all I'm saying is, like, you can bypass them. All fossil fuel is stored solar energy. If you can bypass that that million-year storage period by storing it in batteries, no matter what form they take, molten salts or regular lithium ions, I'm saying you can use that in order to make your life better, or at least keep it where it is. And that's all we're aiming for right now, is to keep life where it is.
I come from a school of thought where that is not.
You can't keep it where it is. Yeah.
No, because you're like,
no, I
understand.
I understand.
Sun and put it in batteries, but those batteries come from materials, and we didn't get a clip on here.
Those materials are limited.
To talk about this, about lithium mining, and like,
I've got it.
That's all fossil energies that go into producing the lithium, and so show me.
Could we not mine minerals by pure manpower?
Yeah, we did. It was called fucking slavery, bro.
No, I get it.
And I agree with you. The end of fossil fuels is already seeing a resurgence of slavery. And that's because fossil fuels, I mean, it's fairly controversial.
Yeah.
I would hope not too controversial to say it wasn't because people just decided that they were moral or that treating humans as using humans as slave labor is wrong.
No, but capitalism was more convenient than fucking slavery.
Well, I mean, and also that was the time fossil energy, like slavery, was abolished.
Yeah.
In most places of the globe, right? Yeah, abolished or shifted to prison labor, right?
Yeah.
In most
not only that,
places
but other
in the
countries.
world,
Yeah.
when around the Industrial Revolution, because like you were mentioned earlier, they were using peat and they were using coal, and they were powering steam-powered machines to do work, and now all of a sudden you didn't need human labor.
Yeah.
And so, you're right.
My only argument is that you can keep it that way with like a little bit of effort, a little bit of science, and just being less of a dick to your fellow man.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, did we ever get this stuff before, like, fossil fuels? And the answer is yes. We used fucking slaves.
Yeah.
And so we have a moral decision.
Okay.
I'm along the morality that I would rather not have certain industrial conveniences than condemn people to a life of hard work and servitude.
What?
However,
okay. Please
go ahead.
No, mine's way less important. Please go on.
No. I think we're past time anyway.
Yeah, we are.
But I mean, that's good. I'm just, that's one of the reasons that we said, hey, dude, let's fucking do a podcast. So that we can like sit here and fucking hash this shit out, because it's a real goddamn question.
No, it really is.
Like,
yeah.
Okay,
I'm open to having mine change.
How do you do this without fossil fuels? And in my thinking, you don't. And what we do use, like, I like that part we're discussing, don't waste it on the military, don't waste it on flashy billboards in Times Square. Like, there has to be, like, because we're going to burn fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, no.
Any environmentalist
happening fucking
100%
now.
green is a
bullshit.
Straight fucking fantasy.
In what period of time are you talking about?
100% green. I mean, like in 20, 30 years.
Yeah. Sorry, it wasn't a real question. I was saying, like, that's bullshit. In what period of time are you talking about? Yeah.
Right. Yes. And I'm of the thinking that it's like the best thing that we could do right now is to reduce our energy consumption, which is why efficiency isn't so important to me. And also start to, and also why I grow my own food and all that other shit. Like, some of it's like for quality, but like, I'm not a fucking health nut. Like, people are like, I grow my own food because like it has more nutrition than store, but that's true. And that's a good benefit to me, but I smoke 2 packs a day and drink like a fucking fish. Like, I'm not growing my own food for my fucking health. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so at any rate, like, I do it for my own personal resiliency, and I do it because I feel ethically like I should attempt to provide, the conditions for the nature or the earth to provide for me what I need in my daily life. So at any rate, and I'm doing that because at the end of Empire, Liberty dies
with thunderous applause.
All right, man. I'm sorry we didn't get to those clips.
It's okay.
We'll debrief after this, and we'll have a conversation about tightening it up. I enjoyed the conversation nonetheless, though. I thought it was
productive. Yes. Well, I think we've got plenty to go on for another 2 episodes.
Part 3, Energy Part 3.
Energy Part 3, Electric Boogaloo. Wait, no.
And this is, dude, I've been obsessing about this. I mean, I know we just did our sign off, but like, I've been fucking like down this rabbit hole, and it's been like fundamental in me making decisions. Like, why would I have chickens and like, pigs and vegetable gardens and all that other stuff? Like, all of that is informed by being like, holy fuck, our entire society like is dependent on fossil fuels. And even if climate change wasn't a thing, like fossil fuels are not forever. But with climate change in the mix, we need to get off fossil fuels early.
Yeah, right? And that's the thing people don't understand is like, it's done. It's done. Just accept that it's done and move on with your life.
What, climate change?
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not going to get any worse. I'm simply saying that it's over with. You don't have a chance to avoid it.
Oh yeah. There's not like, we need to do this so that
you're in the middle. No, you're in the fucking middle of it. Yeah, you're in the fucking middle of it, and just accept that, and let's do what we can to live with that.
We should do next episode is going to be nothing but destroying the bright green lies and just shit. Because I consider myself an environmentalist. Like, I've been arrested protesting, etc., so forth, nonviolent direct action.
Should
Whatever.
we have a James Prigioni?
Should we what?
Should we have James Prigioni right at the beginning and then be shit all over?
I don't know. We'll have to talk about it offline, but maybe we should do
Him
that.
and
'Cause,
Tuck.
yeah, there's a big misunderstanding among people about like what the proper path forward is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that boostering where it's like
There's a
oh, well,
lot of the idea that like, oh, the way things have been, you follow all the rules and everything's going to go just great. And it's like, yeah,
it's like
when has
one of
fucking
the
following the
protests-
rules ever done anything?
One of the big protests I was at in DC. And no, I'm gonna save this story.
Go.
I'm gonna go eat dinner and then
Huh?
fucking do what I need to do.
Yeah.
I'll save the story.
Tell you
Remind me of the solar panel signs if I forget.
Stupid ass solar panel signs. Next episode.
All right.
All right.
Peace, y'all. Take it easy.
Later.
Bye-bye.